We'll go ahead and get started, and other people can join as they come. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about authentication today. The three authentication methods that we're looking at today are WAM and Open Athens and EZproxy. And we have with us Maurine McCourry, who is the director at Hillsdale College's Mossy Library. We have Stephanie Kaceli, who is the director at Cairn University and the library. And then we have Patrick Roth, the head of Systems and Discovery, and Mary Morgan, the library technology manager at Grand Valley. We will have, we're going to go in the order of WAM, Open Athens, and then EZproxy. And I'm assuming people would be fine. If you have questions, jump in. And then we'll have more time at the end for questions and discussion. You might want to mute if you're not asking a question right at this point, because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and we will start with Maurine McCourry with her discussion about WAM pros and cons. And I will keep an eye on the chat in case people are chatting and not on the audio. Okay.
All right, let's see if this works.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right, you seeing my WAM screen there?
Yes.
All right. All right, so I'm going to give just an overview of what WAM is and how it works, and then a list of pros and cons, but yeah, definitely jump in if you have questions. I think WAM is similar to EZproxy in a lot of ways. EZproxy has a little bit more flexibility. WAM is pretty simple. Doesn't always work with everything, although I think right now we have just about everything working, but it's a little touch and go sometimes. It's just kind of old technology. But in any case, WAM is short for Web Access Management, product that Innovative introduced quite a while ago, the late 90s. It essentially turns your innovative ILS or LMS or LSP, whatever you want to call the thing that innovative your system, your innovative system, your innovative server, for us now it's a Sierra server, into a proxy server. It routes users through the proxy or through the Sierra server for authentication before linking out to resources. And it uses the Sierra patron database. So it's in that sense, it's very easy. You just use your system to authenticate and to send people out to resources. And it was introduced in the late 90s, I think in 98. It originally required user browser configuration. So your users actually had to go and do something to their browser. They had to set up a proxy essentially on their own browser, which was not that easy to do, but it was one of the only ways to do off-campus authentication at the time. By the early 2000s, an upgrade enabled what they... Hi.
Okay, hon.
Hello. Should I keep going?
Yes, please.
All right. So in the early 2000s, an upgrade to WAM enabled what they call proxy rewrite. So your users didn't have to do any more configuration. What you did was change the URL that you gave your users for access to resources. And so the proxy information was embedded in the URL to the resource. This worked for a while, but when more and more sites started going to secure sites, to HTTPS addresses, it became more complicated with WAM. Initially, you had to have what's called a SAN certificate. I think it's a subject alternative name certificate, so that you had to enter every address that was a secure site onto your security certificate. That got really, really complicated when Oxford introduced a different host name for every single one of its many, many resources. Became impossible, and so Innovative was able to make a change to WAM that made a wildcard certificate, SSL certificate, work for those secure sites. That saved WAM for us. We were able to continue using it when they did that. I don't think WAM is actually being sold anymore. It's a legacy system for Innovative. I haven't seen it promoted anywhere. It only appears on their website in reference to old documents about how to use it. So it's kind of old news, but it's still being used a lot, and it's still working pretty much for us. To set up WAM, it's pretty simple. The links in your catalog get changed to route the user through that proxy server, through your Sierra server, and so a link like www.jstore.org just gets a 0 added in front for the port. That's short for port 80, which all of this stuff goes through. You use that same address, and then you append the address of your Sierra server onto it. So that takes it, you're actually going through the proxy server, through the Sierra server to get to the resource. With secure sites, to make this work, the workaround, these dashes actually put that user into the proxy server securely, so that you can still get that pass through the proxy. The table in Sierra gets updated to specify the access levels by patron type, and so you can specify what patron types have access to specific resources. You just put an entry in the table for each resource that you need to provide access for. And then the Sierra URL has to be included in the list that you give your vendors, your database suppliers, your resource suppliers, of your on-campus URLs for the IP recognition. So essentially, this is all IP recognition. That's how the proxy server works. The basic steps are the user clicks on this proxied link, the link that includes the proxy information in the catalog. The link sends the user through the Sierra server to authenticates against the patron database, the Sierra patron database. If the user is on campus, the user is sent straight to the resource as if they were clicking on a link that just went to the resource. It's seamless for them. They don't see the proxy intervention. But if they are outside of the IP range that is included as one of your on-campus IPs, then they are sent to a login page, and we use the CAS login page from Innovative. And the proxy URL actually is carried out through the resource. Once the user enters with this proxied URL, that address continues throughout the site that they've navigated to. This is the table where you enter the information about a resource. You can see it's pretty simple. You assign a token, just an abbreviated a symbol for the resource. You enter the address. You can enter a wildcard address so that multiple sites with the same host name can be treated with the same entry. Enter the patron types. And Leanne, I was noticing, I think we're missing something on one of those Alexander Street entries. When I started looking at this, I think one of our patron types is missing on one of these. We generally allow the same access to all our patrons on all of our resources.
Oh, I'll see that. I'll make a
note. I just noticed that a few minutes ago. So it's pretty simple. This is about all there is for the setup. It looks like a lot because there are a lot of databases, but we've built this up over the years that we've had WAM. So when we get a new resource, we just add a line here on this table. You can see here there are 2 versions of entries for this one resource, actually several for this ACLS Humanities. Any host name that's used by a resource needs to have an entry in this table in order for the proxy rewrite to continue to work. In this case, we have both the wildcarded and the simple host names, and we need both of those. we use the proxied, I don't know if that's really a word, but what we've always called the way that the rewritten addresses, we use those on our resource records. And so those are the links that we provide in our catalog to our users. And so this is the classic catalog entry for this same resource, and that link to database you can see is the proxied URL. And so when a user clicks on that, if they're on campus, they will go straight to the resource without any intervention, without having to enter any information. If they're off campus, if they're coming from an IP that's not one of the IPs we've given ACLS as one of our on-campus addresses, then they'll get taken to our login page for our Sierra services. So the pros of WAM, it was a purchase. I mentioned this before we started. We haven't paid anything other than a small maintenance fee in many, many years. And so that's what's hard for us to move away from WAM, because it's already paid for. It's essentially free. It is pretty simple. We just add a single line in a table to add a new resource. It uses the patron database that we keep up anyway, so there's no adding usernames anywhere else. Users don't have to figure out another password to log in to another system. So it's pretty seamless and pretty simple. The cons, though, for one thing, IP recognition just really isn't that secure a method of authentication. It could be hacked pretty easily. Changes in URLs, and this is a problem I'm sure with EZproxy. Any changes in the URLs for our on-campus that are included on our campus or on the Sierra server require us contacting every single resource provider to tell them we have a new URL to add to our list of on-campus IPs. That's been really complicated, weeks of work when that happens, hundreds of providers that we have to contact in many different ways. And then the changes in a resource's website can sometimes break WAM. And that's the kind of issue right now. We're having problems with films on demand. We can't access films on demand through the proxy. We don't know what's going on. Innovative doesn't know what's going on. Films on Demand doesn't know what's going on, but it's something that was changed on their site that no longer works with the proxy rewrite system. So that's all I had on WAM. If you do have questions, you can ask them now or you can email me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen. Does anybody have questions at this point? Okay. I'm going to check the chat. Make sure there's nothing there. Okay. Well, we'll just move on then. Maureen does have to leave a little bit early, but so if you do have questions, you can throw them in the chat or ask them now. And now Stephanie Kaceli, the director of Cairn University's library, is going to talk about Open Athens. Thanks, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Maureen. So as Leanne just said, I'm going to be discussing a little bit about Open Athens, and I forgot to put a screen on what is Open Athens, and I apologize. But so Open Athens is basically an identity and access management service, which means it allows you to access your subscription-based electronic resources, obviously on and off campus. And you can see it as a gateway service to facilitate that access to the publisher. And there we go. Yep, sorry about that. So a brief overview. We are newer to Open Athens, but we were one of the first here in the States, I believe. We implemented late fall 2017, early 2018, and we were previously on WAM. And I started to get a twitch a little bit as Maureen was showing the WAM table. And one of the main reasons why we started to look at Open Athens is that we were having more and more trouble with logins. We were having trouble with the proxy URL coming over. And we had just a lot of complaints. And then we also felt like we well, there was a growing need, a growing request to have a single sign-on solution, but that can get really pricey. So we were trying to figure out how we can use our Google Active Directory in order to authenticate our students, whether they're on or off campus. And then we also do our patron loads. Our patron loads are not automated, where a lot of people get the patron loads coming in on a daily or weekly basis. We are good at keeping our manual loads up to date, but students register all through the semester, and when we have a new class starting and they want to have access to the databases, they want to have them right then and there. And if they're not in the system, in the library system, then they can't get to our databases. So we were looking for some solutions. And I'm going to go through the pros now and then share screenshots that exemplify the pros of why we really like Open Athens. The first part is Open Athens is institution-based, not location-based. So it really doesn't matter the IP address of where they're coming in from. If they're from Cairn, they can get onto the databases, which is a huge plus. The single sign-on actually works really well with our University Google Active Directory. So we don't touch the library system when they're going into the databases. The statistics are very granular. Now that's part of the cons too, and I'll explain that later. It's also easy to add and locate the redirector URL that you need to use. But in addition to that, more and more of our vendors are starting to make linking possible without needing a redirector URL. And I will show you examples of the URLs that we use for several of our databases. And the other pro is that there's really great customer service. Here in the States, it's EBSCO, where you get Open Athens from, and it's part of your service support that you get from EBSCO. And so a lot of times, anytime we're having a problem, I just reach out to our main service person, and then he starts to do the interacting with the vendors, as well as if it needs to go farther, then he reaches out to Open Athens, which is really nice. So here's a pro, the institution versus location. If you're a student and you know that you've done a lot of research with Sage and you know the university has Sage, and you just decide to search Sage from a cafe or from home off campus, and it looks like that you're not part of Cairn, you don't have an institution. If we were still on WAM, we would kind of be stuck there. But because with Open Athens, when they click on the institution, they let you know to look in these areas to see if you have access to this journal content. And with Open Athens, they can search Open Athens, or they can even do it by shibboleth. And when they click on that, you can say, list all institutions, search for Cairn, and we come up. And when they click on that, then they're going to go to their Google login. And then from there, they're now logged in via Cairn University without having to go to the A to Z list or anything like that. So that's been really smooth, and we've enjoyed that. Another pro are the statistics. You can go from very general, getting a view of where people are accessing your data or where they're logging in from, and having doing a login. And this seems low, and I'll explain why this seems low in my cons. And then you can go more granular. Over here, I set it up to be by permission set. So everybody except for alumni are part of our default permission set. But then we've also drilled down, and we've given, depending on what they're studying. So you can also see by course of study who's accessing what. And in addition to that, I can deselect the default permission set, and then I can select a couple others. So here I've taken off the default permission slip, and then I've also added social work and business administration. And so I can get, this is by month, but you can do day, you can do week, you can do a custom range. So it's sky's the limit with the usage data. Another pro is that, as I mentioned, it's easy to add new resources and create a link. This is the contact. So when I contact a vendor, these are the credentials I hand over to the vendor. They need to have this IP address. And then all of these other pieces are just what you give to the vendor, and they know what, most of them know what to do with that. And then within Open Athens profile, I find that database. It'll be green to allocate. When I click on it, I can change it to be allocated, and it would be blue. And once the vendor has the credentials, we're live. And then here's the other part. Or you can open a ticket with EBSCO, and they do all the work, including reaching out to the vendor. So I have this like rugged individualism and think I should be the one setting all of this up, but they're happy to set it up. And a lot of times they'll come back and they'll give you we call it the Athenized link, and it works out really well. It's also easy to add and locate a redirector URL. So sometimes I'll have a faculty member who wants an Alexander Street Press resource. And I can go into the redirector link generator here, and I'll put in the link, click generate, and then it makes the Athenized link for me. And then I just send that off to the faculty. And I can also test it as well. This is Access Science that I did with this. You can also send, you can also do multiple redirector URLs, which is nice. So if you know you have a large number of maybe titles that you kind of want to Athenize very quickly, you can just send them over in a CSV or a text file. So that's helpful. I have a lot of pros, and I could probably talk for like an hour just on Open Athens, but try to make it short. So we also have that, like I mentioned earlier, more of the vendors are making it possible to link without needing a redirector URL, which is really nice for as you're searching and you're getting resources, having that stay within the permanent URL. This works nicely for that. So I've done 3, and in red text is basically what's creating the prompt that this is shibboleth. And so this is EBSCO, it's saying SHIB, so go to SHIB, and then this is our customer ID. So they know that for our SHIB, you go out and you do, it passes through the Open Athens, and then it prompts for our login, which is a Google login. ProQuest is the same way, we just need our account ID. And then Gale, we just need our site ID. There are a couple cons. The first con, I'm actually seeing this less and less now. When we first went live, we were probably one of the first to use the active Google directory. And we were getting a lot of what you see on the right-hand side, which is the 403. And that's an error, and it's not very helpful error. And in on desktops, you get the broken machine with all of the, it just looks like very scary, awful thing. And all it is that our patrons are already logged in, or they've selected their personal Gmail account instead of their cairn.edu account. And so we've solved that by having them either go to privacy browser, clear their cache, or use a different browser for your personal versus Cairn things, or just to make sure you're logged into your Cairn. But recently, there's been a little bit of a change on the Google end, where even if you're logged in on your Gmail account, when you go to authenticate, it actually gives you the option to choose an account. So as long as you're choosing your @cairn.edu account, then you're golden. And then a couple other cons for the statistics. The reason why our statistics were so low is that you have to be logged in. You have to be authenticating through Open Athens. And when you use IP authentication, like we do for on campus, you're not going to get the usage statistics within Open Athens. And I think that's a real con. I attempted when we first went live to force everybody to have to authenticate. And there was a big uprising, and I didn't have the backbone, I guess, to stand firm and say, nope, too bad, so sad, you're going to authenticate. So we changed it back. So if they're on site, they don't have to authenticate. But what that means is our usage is good to see what people are doing off campus, but we're not getting the on-campus usage. And then another con is not all vendors use Open Athens, and the solution is to use a proxied link. So for example, you'll see here in the red, that's going through the proxy that, that Open Athens has set up for us. And that works well. It can get that's probably the worst piece, is every so often it can get wonky and you might have to change your proxy, or they will close down one proxy. There used to be, I think, proxy4.athensams.net, and that had to get changed over. And now proxy 1 is going to start getting phased out. So we have to figure out where we're going after that. But the positive is more and more are becoming Open Athens, and the proxy, it's very limited, the number of databases that we have to use the proxy for. And even, for example, this is of annual reviews, but annual reviews has actually switched over. So we're working on getting that, our links updated. That's really what I had. I'm happy to answer any questions on our setup, even if you wanted to get a little view of how we do things, or to contact. I'm not a sales rep. I'm not trying to sell Open Athens, but if you're interested in Open Athens, EBSCO is the place to go for here on this side of the pond. And they'll set up a webinar and you can discuss things with the Open Athens people. So thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie. There is one question in the chat. It says, what kind of credentials or user information gets sent back to the vendors in order to tell them that the user is actually the authorized person?
So we have that set up through our Google Active Directory. It's we have it set up in Open Athens that we say if it is a undergraduate, graduate, staff, faculty in our within this one attribute in our Active Directory, then they're good to go. And if they're not, then stop them. And then we also have it set up for our alumni where they have access to a smaller pool. So it's the same thing. There's an attribute alumni, and then we have our permissions set up on the Open Athens side to say these databases allow Open Athens, allow alumni as well as all of our other patrons.
So no personal information gets transferred?
Nope, no.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. The Google
Active Directory?
yeah, Active Directory. How did that get set up? Did you have to work directly with Google?
No, so we already have that going on site. That's how all of our students authenticate to the majority of the non-library resources. And I worked with our IT department on setting up, we created a new attribute for the student. It's graduate, undergraduate, faculty, staff, alumni. So that's the one piece we had to do. And Open Athens walks you through the whole process of what you decide to do for authentication. And then you work with them on the attributes, and it works very well.
Okay. There's another chat question. It says when usage is divided into subject areas, business, psychology, etc., is it showing the student's major or the type of database being used or something
That's
else?
a good point. So that is, sorry, I wasn't clear. That's actually our students, what they're studying. So that's the majors who are interacting with the resources.
Okay.
And I could have shown you can do usage stats on not necessarily subject, but you can look at it by resource, not even by user. So there's lots of things you can do with the statistics.
Okay. Are there other questions at this point? Okay, there should be time at the end too if something occurs to you.
Good. I just put one on there.
Oh yeah. How do the stats set up compare to WHAM?
That's a great question. WHAM, the one part I miss from WHAM is that you will get whether they have to hit that login screen or not, you get everybody's statistics. So WHAM is like the full picture. So that's the one piece of WHAM that I miss. But I think it's easier to download them and interact with them, and they're just more flexible of statistics than WHAM.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thanks, Stephanie. We are going to switch now to Patrick Roth and Mary Morgan at Grand Valley, and they're going to talk about EZproxy.
All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. Take that as a yes. All right.
I can.
All right, good. So EZproxy, this is really just a nice overview, I think. So what is EZproxy and what is WHAM? EZproxy is a web proxy server. It lets people who are outside of the libraries or institutions network access restricted content that authenticates users by IP address, which then allows your users to access stuff at home or wherever they happen to be. And really, it works by routing traffic through the EZproxy server, which the database vendors recognize as belonging to like an authorized user. It's pretty easy to set up, a lot like WHAM. For every single resource, you have to have an entry on your proxy server, which is really just a collection of text files that you maintain. So, every link to a database that you want someone to access or be able to access from off campus has to have a prefix in front of that URL. So there's a kind of an example there. And again, that ensures that the link server log in with your institution's credentials, and it makes the data think that they're coming from campus. And again, you use for every single database that you have to.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah.
Your voice is a little garbled. Is it?
Oh.
Now I can hear you fine. For a minute there, it was all a bit garbled.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Now,
well, is
I
it
can
good
hear
now?
you. Yes.
Okay. Good. All right. And so for every resource, you have to have a stanza in your like configuration file, and this is an example of one. This is the most basic setup for a resource. They can get a little bit more complicated depending on requirements from the vendor, like you're being forced to log in by a vendor, or if they're making you accept certain cookies or things like that. I'm looking at Mary, she's really the expert here. I'm just pitching today. So one of the nice things, which I didn't put on my pros list because it was longer than just for pros, there is a number of security features, which is nice. One of the things that Maurine, I think, mentioned was that IP authentication is not the most secure. So as soon as someone's account gets compromised, they can start downloading stuff once they have your credentials. So EZproxy does allow you to like block usernames. If you have recurring problems with like specific countries. You can block countries, you can block specific IP addresses. You can set up limits on how much people can download before they have to take a break, basically. You can connect it to the IP registry via an API, which blocks known bad IPs. Additionally, you can go in and manually monitor like where people are coming from. And we've also worked with our IT department to add the EZproxy to their Splunk server, which basically notifies us if someone is using the same login from multiple countries within a certain time frame. The nice thing about this is it's kind of given us a little bit of goodwill with our IT department, because we are generally finding compromised accounts at Grand Valley faster than the IT department is, and they tend to really like that. So we've been using EZproxy since we've been arguing about the year, but we're going to go with 2005. We are self-hosted. You can also get it hosted by OCLC. One of the things that allows us to self-host it is that our campus ID department is taking care of the server and the server security. And we have one dedicated staff person over in IT who works with the library on most of our IT server stuff. So he has a good understanding of library resource access and how important it is to our students. And so he's usually putting library stuff at the top of his priority list, which is something we really appreciate. And then we take care of the EZproxy service itself. And as far as staffing goes, most of the work is handled by Mary, who is monitoring things and updating things. But we've recently added one support staff to kind of the support team, and she's keeping an eye on those stanza updates. So like that stanza example that I showed you, anytime a vendor changes anything, of course we have to go in and update it. So she's keeping an eye on those and going in and doing that kind of work for us as she can. So the pros, it really is easy to use. Like I said, it's just some text files that you're going in and updating. It's generally pretty easy to troubleshoot. It's flexible, so like usually it can be melded or molded to work for whatever a vendor would need. There's a pretty active user community, so if you run into issues and you're not sure what's going on, usually you can ask a question and someone has an answer for you before, or you get to help people too. And then for us right now, the biggest pro is that it has a pretty low annual cost. For a long time, it was a one-time cost, and then OCLC purchased it and it became an annual cost, but it's still pretty cheap. Cons, it does take staff time, to monitor the usage and the listserv for any updates. We have to keep on top of those URLs, which just takes time to pay attention. It's really important that the collections team communicates with the systems department when resources are added or removed, particularly when they're added, because nothing makes people more angry when they can't access a resource they really want to access at that particular moment. And then when an account does get compromised and the vendor blocks from off campus and the vendor blocks that IP, and then no off-campus access happens for that resource until that issue is resolved. This is super common for us with IEEE, although it's gotten better. They've worked with us on that, but it does cause problems.
Well, one of the reasons it's gotten better is because of the IP registry that we've added, the API connection to, and also the Splunk piece. We're able to jump on top of compromised accounts a lot quicker, so that the vendor doesn't even see a problem.
Yeah, for a while they would report problems like 2 days after we'd fix them, which was kind of funny. But yeah, and that's just a really quick overview. So if you have any questions, let us know. Mary will probably answer them.
Any questions for any of the panelists? Okay, here's one from the chat. Do you also use the IP block list for Paul Butler?
I did for a while, but now that I'm doing the IP registry, I don't have to update it. I haven't removed what I had there, but I haven't had to do anything with it lately. And we added the IP registry API connection in February.
Okay.
I have a question for Stephanie, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, I was wondering, with EZproxy and with WAM, it's pretty seamless to the patron. There's really nothing they have to do unless they're having to log in using their, well, however they log into library systems generally.
Mhm.
With Open Athens, they're having to log in more. Did you find that was that hard for users to learn to do, or was it really pretty obvious what they needed to do?
It was obvious and honest. I mean, the hardest part was the first day when they weren't being prompted for their name and barcode, but they had the Google splash screen come up. And I mean, that's the hardest part. But I actually think it's in some ways more seamless because of they don't have to authenticate as often. I know I was getting a lot of complaints with WAM. Maybe it's different now, but for the students who were off campus, if they were idle for about 20 to 30 minutes, they would have to re-authenticate again. Whereas if they're, so for example, say they're checking something in their email, their Cairn email for a paper or something, and then they go to work in the library with the library databases, if they're going through those links, they're actually already being seen as coming from Cairn and they don't have to log in again.
Okay.
So and it's more of where they have to do a little bit more is if they go to sites without using the link, they might have to click around to find that Shibboleth or Open Athens login.
But on the other hand, it's there and they don't have to go through the library to get to it.
Correct. And it's actually saved our little bottom every so often when Spring Share likes to go down. Like there was a little bit of time when the A to Z list would keep crashing for some reason. And we could get everybody off campus. We're just like, okay, just go to this site, go this way, you're in. And then they didn't have to worry about going to the A to Z list that way.
Thanks.
I've got a question for Stephanie as well. You showed where the linking, you had the link for the IP address. Do you have more than one IP address, and do you have to do that over and over for every vendor for each IP address?
No, we just have the one IP address for Open Athens. And if we decided not to go with on-site the IP authentication on-site, we would just drop everything except for the Open Athens IP address with our vendors. But I maintain the Open Athens plus our other ones just because I don't like to hear people whine about having to log in. So, but it's just that one for Open Athens, and I just have to share it with the vendor. Or honestly, a lot of times it's just EBSCO reaching out to the vendor and saying, here's the IP address, please add it. And it hasn't changed since we went live. So.
And have you explored using the IP registry?
Yes, we do use that.
Okay, there's a question for Grand Valley. Do you force users to always log in even though they're on campus?
It's kind of so the general answer is no. If you're on campus, you don't have to log in. However, there are a few resources that you do have to log in. Mostly our DDA ebooks, they require you to log in whether you're on or off campus. But for most of our resources, you only have to log in if you're off campus.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, here's one. How does Spunk know for potential compromised accounts? Splunk.
It's routed. Our IT department runs Splunk, and they have a sniffer that runs that keeps an eye on the IP addresses, where they're coming from. It uses the geolocation, and they can also see through their Splunk. They're looking at all of their servers, and so they've got something that runs that when the IP addresses are from all over the world or all over the location, it'll flag it, and every morning I'll get an email that will show anybody that's logging in from multiple countries during that time period.
Okay. There was one other question that got answered. Has Grand Valley considered having OCLC manage your EZproxy? And Patrick said not at this point, right?
Yeah, we looked at the price and it just didn't make sense because we paid, what, $500 a year after having spent only $500 for like 15 years total, because it was a purchase once and it ran, we owned it. But then when, like Patrick said, OCLC took over, we now basically pay $500 a year for that service, for the privilege of getting updates.
I think before we would move to hosted by OCLC, we want to see what Open Athens could offer. We've been interested. We've looked into Open Athens before, and it was more than one thing at the time. But I think if we were really examining it, we'd take a much closer look.
We've actually been looking at Open Athens a little bit too. Just mostly, well, the security is an issue, but we just seem to run into more and more problems with WAM.
So I'm curious, Stephanie, have you noticed fewer problems going through Open Athens than you had with WAM?
Yes, I do. I see those problems come up, and there's actually one site who I know they purchased Open Athens. They haven't brought it up yet. So when she posts something, I'm always like, when is your day?
It's going to work for you?
I think it's more of the, I'm so grateful I don't have to have those conversations with vendors anymore to convince them what WAM is and that it matters. And they need to listen and they need to fix this problem. So, because a lot of them just think there's EZproxy.
Right. Right. Yeah, we ran into that.
Yeah. And knowing I actually the other week I sent, we were having a problem with WorldShare. That was actually one of our only ones still running in the first search. The only one still running through the old way because that wasn't working with Open Athens. And we ran into a problem with, I don't know if it was with the SSL certificate or something on our server. And I reached out to EBSCO, to our service person, and just said, is there anything we can do? And he wrote back within like an hour and said, this might just be too easy because it just doesn't seem like it should have been this easy, but give this a try. And it worked. And now all of our ILL stuff, because a lot of students were having problems off campus putting in requests for ILL. So that resolved itself very quickly. And it's just a little simple link that we had to update.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there other questions at this point or any last minute thoughts? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'd really like to thank the people that joined us to help us learn a little bit more about authentication, which Stephanie Kaceli, Maurine McCourry, Patrick Roth, and Mary Morgan. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you taking the time to share the information with us.